Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by the Ham Station. Get your new radio or antenna by calling 800-729-4373 or go to hamstation.com.
It's Ham Radio with Neil Rapp. Here we go. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Call in, let's talk. Neil's your guy. Ham Talk Live. Here we go on Ham Talk Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 35, setting up a remote station with Marty Sullaway, KC1CWF, recorded live on Thursday, October 13th, 2016. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we'll be joined by Marty Sullaway, KC1CWF, to take your questions about remote operations. And we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week, Lou Malchik into our queue was here to talk about how you can participate in School Club Roundup, whether you're just an operator or if you work with a school. If you missed the show, you can listen anytime. All you got to do is go to hamtalklive.com. Or you can download it from iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, SoundCloud, or YouTube. So I do want to remind you, since Lou was on last week talking about the School Club Roundup, it's almost here. Schools will be on all next week. That starts Monday at 1300 UTC and goes until Friday at 2359. So please get on the air if you can and give some schools a call. The exchange is just the RST, state, or DXCC entity if you're not in the U.S. or Canada. And the class is either individual, club, or school. So, for example, if you're just an individual operator, you'd send like 59 Indiana individual. And that's it. So that's, of course, if you live in Indiana, and it's actually a 5.9, although it's always a 5.9, right? Well, anyway, most schools will be on somewhere between 14.250 and 14.280, and 7.225 to 7.255, and probably some PSK on 20 and 40 meters. So check those areas for schools, and then some other schools will be running other modes, APRS, CW, who knows. But some won't be able to operate in those recommended frequencies, but that's a good place to start. And you can also check the spots like the X Summit for the location of some schools on the air. And if you are a school, be sure to check out the ARRL website for all the rules, information, and try to get in on the air sometime next week. Now, Marty, you've run a little bit of School Club Roundup. What's your impression here?
You know, I've actually had the privilege to kind of do School Club Roundup in, I guess, kind of the three big ways you could do it. You know, you could be a single operator, you could be operating a school station, or you could be just operating a club station. Those are, I believe, the three big categories. And I've actually operated all three. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great chance to get on the air and talk to other kids. Obviously, I'm a teenager. I'm 14. And although there's plenty of children on HF, teenagers, young adults, being able to contest to some extent together with people your age is a lot of fun, and I'd encourage everybody to get on, even if you're just like a club station. I've been known to get on with a club call sign, and actually hand out the club designator in my exchange. And a lot of people think I'm a school club, and you can actually get some nice pile-ups. You'd be surprised. Although a lot of people don't think so, there's high QSL count hours rates to be had. So it's a really fun event. It's great that the ARRL puts it on.
Yep, and that's also sponsored by Limark, and I hope to be on. I've fought all week. Murphy has moved into school. Everything we've gone to do has just gone wrong. But tomorrow, the tower climber's coming back, so we'll hopefully have an antenna back on and have everything ready to go for next week. Well, Marty's going to be back, and he's going to talk about remote operations. So if you have any questions about those, get those ready. We'll do a little introduction and a short interview, and then I'll give you a chance to call in. The number that we will use to call in after the interview part, that's 812-NET-HAM1, 812-638-4261. Or you can Skype us at HamTalkLive. And if you want to tweet us, you can tweet a question. It's at HamTalkLive. And then there's the post a comment section on the website. So you can post something there as well. And it should pop up on the screen here. So I'll be back with KC1CWF. That's Chicken with Fries right after this, from the Ham Station right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by the Ham Station. For 35 years, the Ham Station has brought new and used radios, antennas, accessories, and equipment to the amateur radio community. Give Jeff or Dan a call at 1-800-729-4373 or order online at hamstation.com. Ham Station carries all the major brands like ICOM, Yaesu, and Kenwood. Shop from a wide selection of radio scanners, MFJ accessories, Heil Sound products, Mirage and Ameritron amplifiers, Cushcraft antennas, and more. Easy online shopping and fast shipping are waiting for you at hamstation.com or call 1-800-729-4373. The Ham Station, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Out of all of the ham radio podcasts in the world, this is definitely one of them. You are listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. The Ham Station has you covered. For both new and used equipment, give Dan or Jeff a call at 800-729-4373 or go to hamstation.com and tell them you heard it right here on Ham Talk Live. Ham Talk Live is on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time at hamtalklive.com. If you missed the show, check out the archive on hamtalklive.com or check out one of those podcasting thingies. They have that. Yes, podcatchers. Marty Sullaway, KC1CWF, or as we know him best, Chicken with Fries, is 14 years old. He became a ham at age 12 in November of 2014. 4 months later, he upgraded to general and now has his extra. Marty enjoys tinkering, rag chewing, and contesting. He likes building his antennas and likes to help people get on HF and mentor new hams. Marty is the current and founding president of the Eastern Massachusetts Contesting Club. The club's goal is to promote radio sport contesting among kids in Eastern Massachusetts. And Marty spoke at the Dayton Hamvention Youth Forum last year and often contributes to various ham radio podcasts. So, Marty, officially, welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be here. I've known you for a while, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, it's been nice to have you on here. So first of all, the phonetics for your call, KC1CWF, you use the chicken with fries thing. So I got to ask you just the first off, before we get started on this remote ops thing, who has the best chicken with fries?
There's only one place you can get amazing chicken with fries, and that is my house. My parents make the best chicken with fries. Gotta plug my mom.
So is Mom going to invite me over if I go to Boston?
Ship up to Boston, and we will figure that out.
And we'll figure that out. Okay. So no KFC versus Chick-fil-A or
No.
No.
It's the Sullaway house.
No.
An editor's note: I have my general, not my extra.
And your favorite song is the Chicken Dance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, very, very.
So
classic
we may hear from the chicken every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
Throughout the show. So yeah, there we go. All right. Okay. Enough of the
You're getting
jocularity.
Yeah, really.
Tell me about remotes. Okay. What hardware and software do you need if you want to start and set up your own remote station?
That is a loaded question, my friend.
Isn't it?
Well,
though?
Yes. So, I guess the first thing to kind of put a disclaimer in front of this all is there's 1,000 different ways you can remote your station. Primarily tonight, I'm talking about where most of my experience comes from is operating stations on the HF bands. And I think before you could even say what hardware do I need, what software I need, you really need to say what do I want to do with this remote station. Do I want to be set up to do full high power SO2R remote contesting single op 2 radios? Do I want to just be able to play on PSK on 20 meters low power? I don't want to do CW or phone. Maybe I only have one antenna. There's a lot of different levels of complexity. And it's also a lot about how much do you want to spend. And I'll tell you, for the longest time, over a year actually, my remote station cost me probably about $40. And I'll explain how I did that in a second. But I think that the first question is, how much do you want to spend? What do you already own? Because depending on what you own, there's a number of routes you can go. And also, why? Am I buying this to goof off? Am I buying it's really how much money am I you get what you pay for kind of with remotes. So I guess what I'd call the free route, although it isn't really free, what I did for the longest time is I just had my radio with logging software open, and I had rig control connected up, so you can change the frequency and whatnot. And then I just use Skype, like I'm talking to you on right now, to handle the sideband audio. And I used Vox on the radio, so when my audio came from the other side on Skype, it would key up the radio. And I'd use a piece of software called TeamViewer, which is remote desktop software. It allows me to see a desktop somewhere else in the world to connect up to my computer to control the rig control and initiate the Skype calls and whatnot. And then I just bought a cheap relay board off of eBay. You can find them online. I used one by a company called SaneSmart. And I had a remote coax switch sitting around, so I hooked that up to a bunch of relays, and I just switched 12 volts to switch to each antenna. And I found a board on the internet, wrote a little bit of code. I used Python, and if anybody wants any of this software stuff, all these boards are cheap. $30. If you want software to go with it, shoot me an email. KC1CWF at KC1CWF.us. That's where you find my contact. That's my email. That's just one way out. You can do it, but there's 1,000 ways. I guess this is kind of a long answer, but
yeah. So that's the DIY
that's the cheapo
route.
way.
That's the cheap way.
But you don't.
Okay,
I'm cheap.
now
But you don't
let's
have to be cheap.
Right. So let's talk a minute about the other way around.
Shall we
What
talk
is it?
about
Plug
the
and
very
play.
high end?
Plug and play.
Plug and play.
Plug and
Well,
play.
plug and play is going to cost you some money, but I guess Well, how about there's no plug? It's just play. If you want to play, you don't even care about whose station you're using. You can browse over to remotehamradio.com, which is a play-to-pay website run by W2RE and WW2DX. I'm Hams in New York. You pay $99 a year at their base price and then around 50 cents a minute. And they have like 20 stations all over the U.S., and it's first come, first serve. It's just an internet client, and you can control stations, CW phone. You can do it all. That's the play. If you that's just the pay and you play. There's no plug. Just play.
Okay.
If you want to say set up your own station at home, I think the top of the line product is probably the Elecraft. The Elecraft system, which is you buy an Elecraft K3. It's a high quality contest radio typically, and then Elecraft sells another radio called the Elecraft K3 Zero Mini, which is basically the front panel of an Elecraft K3. So it's the same. It looks identical. There's just no RF deck. And then there's a company called Remote Rig, which sells, or what's actually sold by Elecraft, that sells up 2 boxes. And you just plug an Ethernet cable into one side of the box, and you plug your radio into the other side of the box. And that sits at your home station. And then you have this little other remote box that looks identical that plugs into that K30 Mini anywhere in the world, and you have the front panel of your radio just like you're sitting in front of your radio. You'd never know your remote. That's probably the high end, but that'll set you back a few $1,000. And that just takes care of rig control. You need to still rotate your rotors and switch your antennas. And that, there's pre-made products to do that. Green Henry Engineering makes some stuff to do that. There's 1,000 ways to go, but I'd probably classify that as the high end.
Okay, so let's go for the middle. Let's go for something that I want to do this at my home station. So I'm not just going to rent time on somebody else's, but I just want to go kind of plug and play, but use the rig I've already got.
Well, it depends on what sort of radio you have. Say you have an ICOM radio. ICOM makes a piece of software called RSBA1. RSBA1. I'm actually using it right now for my remote. It's $99. You just run the software on a computer at home that's plugged into your radio. Say you have it'll take care of all the radio communication, all the audio pass through, and if you have a fancy newer radio that has the spectrum scope built in an ICOM radio, it'll even pass that over the remote. That's probably the high level entry level. You can even get like a knob that'll plug in on your remote computer so you can feel like you're spinning the VFO. That's for ICOM. There's a piece of software called Remote Hams that can kind of do something similar also. And that piece of software, is remote control software. You run a server at your shack, and then you run a client in the field on another computer that you want to control your home radio with. The Elecraft solution does not require a computer. All these other ones do. And with that, you can remote your station, but actually Remote Hams has a network of remote stations all over the world. You can actually ask to use other people's stations, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah. Now Murphy's been following me all week. I mean,
yes, the Murphy and remote operation.
We got the stepper back from being rebuilt, and you didn't even break it. Yeah, and we didn't break it. We got it all put back together, and then the rotor would only turn right and wouldn't turn left. Brand new rotor out of the box. So I had to send that back. So then the tower climber comes up. The mass pipe won't fit. And so now we got to change our tower configuration around. And it's like everything, and of course it's the week before School Club Roundup. And so, yeah. So everything that I've gone to do in the last week.
Murphy's been there.
He's following me. So
Murphy comes to remotes too.
Yes. What happens when Murphy shows up to remotes and something goes wrong and you're not there?
The best thing to do if you're using, say, computer software, make sure your computer's set up to power off on power on after the loss of power. That's one thing. You can buy remotely controlled surge protectors, that IP surge protectors that you can power cycle over the internet to power cycle all your gear. We're not even talking about amplifiers yet. That's a whole other subject. That's one thing to do. We've had RFI issues where I have a friend, K2LE, who lives in New York City and has a remote station in Vermont. And there's plenty of times when you're setting up a big remote station, you will have to drive there. And that's just kind of a reality until you get the bugs out. But being able to power cycle everything helps. You got to work out the bugs.
Yeah, I think I could even use that at the repeater site because occasionally we got to power cycle some stuff there. So how do you count something during a contest or for some award, like maybe it's Worked All States or something, the XCC? How do you count that if you log into somebody's remote station out in Arizona? Do you count it as if you're in Arizona? Do you count it as if you're in Boston? How do you count that in a contest?
So here's
or
the
award?
one thing about remote operation. It is great, and it can be used so ethically. And there's a lot of people who don't use remote stations who believe there's no way to use them ethically. And as kind of something that's new and upcoming to ham radio, it's our responsibility to make sure we're using them as ethically as possible, not to, kind of send other people away from remote operation. So yes, you always have to be ethical. If I'm using a station in California, I'll make sure I'm KC1CWF /6, for example. Always say, yes, I'm actually in California. For awards, I always keep that stuff separate. You never want to be a lot. There's been a lot of stuff recently as far as people using remote stations as ears around the world. Maybe you're loud on 160, but you can't hear for anything. Maybe you'll just you think it's okay to tune on to some quiet site somewhere else in the world, even though you're transmitting from home. If it wasn't two-way, you didn't make the queue, and I'd argue that is unethical. So be ethical about your operation, because it's very important to do that. There's a lot of people watching you and scrutinizing you, and as a hobby, we really have to self-regulate. So it's very important to operate your station ethically.
Okay, so you're going to count it as the location of the transmitter. That's where you're going to count it as.
Yes, you always count the location of the transmitter, but you should be receiving at the same place you're transmitting. That's key.
Sure.
Same thing goes for DXCC credit. If you're within whatever the rules say, even if you're remote, if you're within the radius that's acceptable, it's acceptable. If you're not, it's not. It's pretty simple.
All right, very good. Well, we've got that cleared up. Well, we're going to take time out here to pay some of the bills, but we're going to come back, and then we're going to take your calls for Marty, and you can ask questions about remote operations right after this message from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the Ham's dime store since 1978, bringing connectors, antennas, cables, and other parts to the world. Scott and Jill travel the country bringing their store to you at Hamfest, but you can also order online at pl-259.com or by calling 920-435-2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, audio cables, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even in use on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics is a dealer for MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro Technologies. Tower Electronics online at pl-259.com, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Join the conversation. call us on voice with Skype at Ham Talk Live or give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
And we'd like to thank Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show once again tonight to help bring you Ham Talk Live. They will be at the Greenville, Tennessee Ham Fest. That's coming up on Saturday. And then they'll be in Chattanooga, Tennessee on October 21st and the 22nd. Or you can call them 920-435-2973. Or, as I had to do again this week, right after I got my order, I had to order more stuff. So, I went to pl-259.com and got some more stuff, because Murphy keeps following me everywhere. So, make sure you tell him you heard it on Ham Talk Live, and make sure you listen to Ham Talk Live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern live right here on HamTalkLive.com. And then also you can check out our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. Just search for Ham Talk Live. You'll find us. Well, it's time for your calls. So if you have a question for Marty, call 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Or you can Skype your question at Ham Talk Live, or you can tweet at Ham Talk Live, or you can even post in the comments on HamTalkLive.com and ask away your questions about remote operations, whether it's setting up your own or using one of the many that are online. And Marty will share his knowledge with you. So, I think I hear the chicken again. I think I hear that, Marty.
I hear it too.
Yeah, I think it's there. So, Chicken with Fries is here. Give him a call. 812-NET-HAM1 is the number.
Call the number.
So, while we're waiting, there's some stations that do rent out time on the remotes. How do they do that? And what's the best way to make sure you're getting the one that's not trying to rip you off?
Well, I haven't actually heard of anybody getting ripped off by hams in the U.S. In Europe, there's some other things going on with remotes, but I think mainly focusing on the U.S. I think it's, find a station, maybe find a cluster of stations. That's the great thing about RemoteHamRadio.com. They have stations all over the world for like $1,000 a year. You can use that. Amazing stuff, actually. They have a station in Haiti, Hotel 2 Alpha Alpha. I'd check that out. Oh, and if you're a kid, if you're a teen, Remote Ham Radio has a program where you can actually apply to get use of their stations for a year. If say you got a lot of noise, or you're an HOA, that's pretty cool. There's some people that will just sell you their stations. I know for a few $100s a year, you can have access to W7RN in Nevada. Get this, they have an 80-meter beam.
An 80-meter beam?
80-meter beam.
Wow.
At one point in time, they had stacked 80-meter beams. The whole tower rotates. Imagine that.
Yeah, you about have to have a rotating tower for that kind of load. Wow, that's
for
huge.
only a few $100s a year, you can have access to the station. I believe they have a 5-stack of 20-meter Yagis, 7-element Yagis, something like that. It's incredible stuff. What else? There's a lot of stations around the U.S. It's new technology. People are just figuring it out. But this is actually really a great time, I think, if you just want to get going. Obviously, as your station gets bigger, there's more cost involved. Remoting things like amplifiers and rotating towers and stack matches for big stacks, that can get complex and complicated. And it's really, you can be an engineer to do this sort of stuff. It's not easy.
Now, I didn't This is unscripted here, by the way. I didn't mention this, but one of the things that we've caught on to after going to Contest University and kind of figuring out a few things is a lot of times we'll do web SDR and just kind of listen to make sure we're getting out. So we're not remote transmitting, but we'll remote receive just to see if we're getting a signal into that part of the country, and that's free.
Yeah, that's a good way to check propagation. But remember, you can use that to check propagation, but I'd be careful. I wouldn't be using that to pull weak call signs out of the mud.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, anything else on the ethics front you wanted to talk about? Because that's
there's a lot of people questioning it.
Whole new thing.
Yeah, and I think it's as more people get on remotes, there's going to be more and more, ethical standards set. But the important thing is play by the rules. Typically, if you're reading the rules, most contests don't have any special remote categories. There's no need for that. Just think about, on your 2-meter radio, you have maybe you have a separated front plate. Imagine you're using a long cord to get to your front plate, be it over the internet or not. And if you had an extended front plate and your radio was in California, and you were keying up the repeater in California, and you were sitting in New England, you wouldn't say, "Oh, there's some magical 2-meter opening. I'm magically getting into this repeater in California." So same thing. Operate ethically. Don't lie. Follow the rules. It's pretty simple.
812-NET-HAM1 is the phone number for Marty, KC1 Chicken with Fries. Talking about remote operations tonight, 812-NET-HAM1, or you can tweet us at HamTalkLive. Now, while we're waiting here, if somebody has a question, please chime in. But this is especially like the amplifiers and the rotating towers and everything. This is putting some of your equipment at risk. So, what are the risks of, like, you overdrive the amp and there's nobody there to do that, or the amp blows up?
I don't think there's any more risk in overdriving your amp remotely than there is at home.
But there's nobody there to watch it if it's yours.
Well, typically you'll have remote metering, so you can see how much power you're driving over the remote. You're probably using some sort of automatic tune amplifier, or maybe an amplifier for each band if you're remote, so you can change bands. And typically those things have some sort of protection in them, so that often saves you some trouble.
And the antennas, if the antenna falls down and they keep turning it?
If the antenna say that again?
If the antenna falls down, but they keep turning it.
So you're saying, like, the antenna falls off the tower.
Right.
And the rotator keeps spinning?
And they keep turning the rotator.
Well, couldn't that happen at home too?
Well, yeah, it could happen at home, but then you'd notice it.
Can you see? Do you
maybe you could put a webcam up?
Yeah, we do that at a lot of stations. We put up webcams looking at the front panels of radios and out the window. But I think that's just as applicable in real life. If you look at most contest stations, you cannot see the towers from the operating chair. I know I can't see my antennas from my chair.
Well, yeah, but I mean they're close by, so.
But I wouldn't know anymore if I was remote or if I was in the basement.
Yeah. So for example, I know somebody who has a remote station here in Indiana.
Yep.
But lives out on the West Coast. And so it's not like he can just,
drive
run down
on
the
over
street and drive on over if something happens. So I'm just wondering what kinds of safeguards, and you're mentioning some of these,
right?
What kind of safeguards can you do to make sure that things work?
Rotators. Oftentimes things like automatic band switching on your antennas. You're always transmitting it to the right antenna. Things like that. But I think rotator stops you'd have anyways. it's common sense operation. Anything physical things will fail. You can only build your antenna so tough. Something will eventually break, just like they would at home, and you will have to deal with that. That's the reality.
812-NET-HAM1 is the phone number, 812-638-4261. If you have some questions about remote operation with Marty, we've got a few minutes left here. So give us a call or a tweet or something, and we'll
Tweet
get your
at us?
questions on. Yeah, you can tweet at us at HamTalkLive. That will work as well. So you're doing this from your
I remote
home,
all
right?
over the world. What?
Yeah. So what do you like now that you've got the ICOM 7300, and you've got that ability to do the
Remote it?
ICOM software and remote that, and then you've got the stuff that you put together and you designed yourself.
Right.
So what do you like about your setup, and then what do you like about the ICOM thing?
Well, the ICOM setup is my main setup right now. And to be honest, it works great. Audio is crystal clear. There's very little latency. I can use a remote knob if I wanted to. And it's lightweight. The positive and the negative of the Elecraft system, which is kind of probably the most popular for high-end remotes. That's what W7RN uses, for example. You have to carry it somewhere. If you're already bringing your laptop, you can just fire up the ICOM software and off you go. That's the plus.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an easy way to get the job done. With
And then,
the software.
I don't use the ICOM software when I'm doing things like PSK. I'll just run FLDigi over the remote, and you'd never know what's remote because you're just screen sharing, No different than you'd be if you're sitting in front of the radio clicking buttons on a computer screen.
Now, is there anything in your cheap homemade setup that you've been able to do yourself that you can't do on one of these
Hi,
prepackaged
fancy.
software? Yeah.
No, but as you automate your station more and more, you lose a little bit of manual control that's nice to have. For example, maybe I want to, I want to listen. I don't have a receive antenna port on my radio. Something happens with lower cost radios, but maybe I want to switch back and forth while I'm receiving after my CQs between a 80 meter vertical, which is quieter than say my 40 meter vertical on 80 meters. You have that control with a manual setup that you programmed yourself, as opposed to something that's maybe more automated. All this can be set up. It's just a matter of complexity. What you pay for is what you get, I think, with these things. But if you're good at building it yourself, you can build it. But I will say Green Heron Engineering makes some great polished products. Same with Elecraft. What they make works. The ICOM software works. It's but when you pay, it works.
Yeah. Now, the one time I was thinking about doing this, I thought,
Yep.
if we did a remote at school, so because we're up in the penthouse, and so the students can't always, get up there, and they can't do it, in the evenings from home or whatever. So we actually set up a repeater and had a repeater controller that would do remote base. And so we were going to try to do that with remote base, but then I got to thinking about some of these things I asked you about, which was, what do you do if, the rig
Here's
does
the other
something
thing.
funny, or
I should
turning the
mention-
antenna, or switching the antenna, or
You always
doing
have
something.
failovers.
Yeah.
I got to point this out. You got to make sure you have some sort of way that your radio will not get stuck in transmit.
Yeah.
On all the setups I put in, we always make sure, if you're stuck in transmit it for 3 minutes, shuts you off. Got to make sure you can't violate the FCC rules there. You don't want to accidentally start spewing computer sounds on the bands.
Yeah, so that was always my concern was, what happens if something funny goes, haywire, and then, I can't get to it because the building's locked up for the night, and what do you do in those situations? So that's a little bit of what prompted the discussion, and we ended up not doing the remote base. We had some other issues that we weren't able to work around, so we ended up.
Your idea is you
not
talk it
doing
on
that, but
you talk it on a repeater.
yeah,
And you'd end up on 20 meters.
yep.
So what? I don't know what.
That was the original. That was the original way to do it.
Well, I'm not sure how legal that is.
Well, you have to have the license for it,
right? But if you have a technician,
right?
because
Then
they're
you
going
can't
through
do
a
it.
repeater,
Then you can't act. Then
right?
you can't do
It's
it.
right.
Yeah,
You know,
you can't do it.
but they may be a third party in part because they're passing through the repeater, which is licensed by an extra class. So I don't know the legal side.
Yeah,
of it.
you'd have to have a control operator. I mean, you couldn't just leave that on. It would be something you would. It'd be something you touch tone on and off.
I know it is legal for say a technician to get on a 2 meter repeater that crossbands over to 10 meters. I know that is allowed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you may be able to be a technician.
But this is a remote base situation, so
Right. I don't. You gotta be careful with.
you got to be
ethics.
careful with that.
You got to be
Exactly.
ethical. As I said,
Exactly.
ethics is important. Any phone calls?
No, I haven't seen anything.
I'm scaring everybody away.
They're just listening late. They're probably watching the football game or something. So
You
never know.
I'm not that. You're entertaining. I'm not that entertaining.
Well, we try.
The chicken.
We try. Yeah, the chicken. We can play the chicken.
I'll play the chicken.
Yeah, there we go. And we've got the cat in the background, but I don't know if you heard it. Now, one little thing that you may not know about one of your friends, Sterling, is when he was on the show, you could hear his cat jump off of the desk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he found that. It was a little extra Easter egg that was in that show. You could hear
Okay.
you could hear his cat jump off the desk.
My rabbits live outside.
So, your rabbits.
I have two beautiful bunnies.
Very good. Well, Marty, we're just about out of time, but I want to thank you for coming on, and I know there'll be a lot of people listening to this later on that this'll give them some good ideas on how to start using some remote operations if they want to get into that. And of course, it's not for everybody. Some people are going to say, that's not real radio, and
It is real radio,
and
but
it
that's
is
a
real
discussion.
radio. But yeah, that's a discussion. That's a some differing opinions on it. But you've given them some information on how to get started, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks so much for letting me on, making some trouble here. It's a lot of fun. And again, I just want to say, if anybody wants to get in contact with me, if you're too scared to call in, KC1CWF at KC1CWF.us is the email, or just look me up on QRZ, and I'd be happy to help you with your remote needs.
Yes. Oh, and we get a tweet from Sterling saying Charlie the cat is famous on the podcast. So there we go. Well, that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. I'd like to thank my guest, Marty Sullaway, KC1CWF, and everyone out there in cyberspace that's listening, and invite you back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time when Charles Johnston III, W8KWA, will be here to talk about how to get started with D-Star. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, visit HamTalkLive.com. So for now, with Marty Chicken with Fries, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.